Hello and welcome to Straight Talk with me, Sifiso Mahlangu. This is channel 405 on DSTV. We are called ANN7. I have a delightful guest today, the DSG of the ruling party, Ms. Jessie Duarte. Ms. Duarte, I welcome you to the show.
Thank you very much.
First of all, congratulations on a great policy conference.
Thank you.
Incredibly well organized protocol and how you treated members of the press.
It was a pleasure.
To which we were very excited about.
Yes.
Yeah. What are your findings or recommendations from the ANC's National Policy Conference?
Radical economic transformation. I think the conference itself was dominated in every sector by transforming the structure of our economy to make sure that black South Africans begin to own the economy. Top of mind for us is still how to create more jobs in this country. We are concerned that the level of unemployment is huge. And you know, it's a question of both at the level of people over the age of 50 now beginning to lose jobs. As companies take in younger people, the earlier retirements are being forced on people. But with that comes poverty because people haven't planned for earlier retirements. So a comprehensive social net for the country is also being discussed, is on the table. And I think that, you know, the primary policy direction of the ANC is still that which is based on the National Democratic Revolution, even though many people don't want that word. That's the fact of life for us. And we need to reindustrialize our economy. We have no other choice. And I must say that perhaps one must just congratulate Mr. Manye for having procured ANN7 and TNA. It's a good thing. Of course, there are going to be many naysayers and haters.
There already are.
Of course, this is not an industry of friends, frankly speaking. Highly competitive. The print industry in particular is shrinking back. So any space that is taken by anyone else is contested. But as far as we are concerned, we will work with TNA and ANN7 and still work together. It's the only media house that has actually put the government's viewpoints quite fairly and in a balanced way. So we're not unhappy with that, and we wish him well and hope that you know, we'll see this institution growing from strength to strength.
Does it concern you as the ruling party or as an African individual that the New Age is the one black-owned newspaper, that the New Age is the only news agency in this country that has a progressive message, that ANN7 is the only news agency in this country that tries to paint a narrative that is not hostile to the black child?
You know, I think that it is concerning that the narrative, let's say the narrative of your direct competitor, is a narrative to support the opposition in South Africa. And they also campaigned for change, as they said. What change is my question, has always been my question. I think newspapers, historically and globally, papers do take sides politically. And there's nothing wrong with that. But we've always had a very skewed position in our country where journalists may have been progressive and working for a particular newspaper. But the ownership of various media houses in South Africa come with a particular history, you know, and changing that history and transforming that history is as difficult for them as it is for us to transform and change the structure of our economy.
We've come out of the ANC's Fifth Policy Conference, and one of the major debate points was the term white monopoly capital and the existence of white monopoly capital. Did Mr. Joe Netitenze misrepresent the findings of those commissions?
You know, there were 11 commissions, and he was tasked with consolidating the views of 11 different commissions. It was a very difficult debate to pull together into one single sentence. And I think that as a scribe, and I've been a scribe and a rapporteur many times in the ANC, I can tell it's very difficult to make sure that you have the balance of all views in one sentence. It's not possible. But the essence of the argument is as follows. We live in South Africa. Our reality is that we have a problem with our economy, which is a structural problem. Our economy is still owned primarily by white South Africans. It's not that that is a crime in itself. However, what every South African and every citizen has to accept now is that radical economic transformation is not our enemy. It is there to assist us with what might become a crisis if we do not have black South Africans being in the majority in the ownership space of what this economy is.
Is it fair, Ms. Duarte? One of your MPs, Ms. Makosi Khoza,
yes,
does exactly what you're against and goes to social platforms and slams the ANC leadership and slams President Jacob Zuma and, you know, hosts speaking engagements where she speaks against the ANC.
Well,
she's come against that which you discussed as democratic centralism and organizational renewal. What do you do with an individual like that?
I think the circumstances of two individuals that you're describing are very different. And I'd like to say that Makosi Khoza, she's made some serious mistakes that no politician within the context of a collective should make. She has access to the caucus of the ANC. She can speak in that caucus. She has access to her own leadership in her province and in her region.
And she hasn't exercised that.
She doesn't do that. What she does is she goes into the social media space, builds up a persona as an alternative voice of goodness within the ANC. And you know what? I think that there are question marks about that.
Should the ANC
and she is
KZN withdraw Makosi Khoza from Parliament?
Well, I can't make a comment on that. She's in the process of going through a disciplinary hearing now. And it would be unfair for me to make proposals to them as to how they should see the outcome. Safe to say that her obvious disdain for the ANC is unacceptable.
Someone such as Mr. Derek Hanako is still the chairperson of the ANC's National Disciplinary Committee. Someone who speaks at that level against the ANC leadership, against other leaders in the ANC. How do you trust him in that position of leadership?
Well, as you know, he's been given time and he's up. Yesterday was the deadline. He's now written a letter to tell us why he thinks he should not be removed from being the chair of the National Disciplinary Committee of the ANC, which is a very serious space. And I must say that the thing you need to understand is that the ANC does not react in the way normal people react, with anger. You know, because anger is an emotion, it's not a strategy. You can do nothing with your anger. What we need to do is, we'll have to go through a process with Comrade Derek. Quite clearly, he has made it very difficult for him to continue to be supported as the chair of the National Disciplinary Committee, because many people who would have to be disciplined in future will have a difficulty being disciplined by somebody who went out in the public domain before a vote was cast and told people to vote against the ANC before it was even announced by the Speaker that it would be a secret ballot. After the vote was announced, continued on the social media to make many comments about why he thought so. And again, he is a member of the NEC and the NWC, has ample opportunity to argue his debates in there. But I think that there are people in our society that when they lose a debate, they cannot accept that they've lost it. And they continue to have that debate on social media.
In this public discourse, Ms. Duarte, one must admit that the ANC receives fractures from these people who are NEC members, who are MPs, who continue to speak against the party, such as Mr. Pravin Gordhan. The last time you and I had a conversation on this show, you said the top six was going to sit with Mr. Gordhan to reflect on his posture at that point in time. Not much has changed. So maybe there's a fear from the ANC to deal with these MPs, or there's a reluctance to discipline people?
Yeah.
If these people are breaking the organization wider than it has already been broken, why not just retract that?
We honestly, I was hoping we would get away from this malignancy conversation, because we need to change the narrative in this country. I think that malignant speech by individuals, people have brains and they can discern when a person is on a personal campaign. And I found it very interesting that on Hard Talk, when the journalist asked him if he had any himself specific acts of corruption against Mr. Zuma that he could point to, he said no, but it's being discussed out there. So he himself is carrying a narrative for which there is limited base. And again, I think that yes, he's been spoken to, as they say, but clearly respect for the person he spoke to is not there. And that is very worrying. So we haven't yet reached a point where we're saying, the further action will be taken against him. But I am critical, frankly speaking. I know he's also critical of me. I don't mind that at all. But I do think that a person as senior as PG has to understand that, he sets a trend. And even if he wins his argument in maybe 100 years' time, other people will do to him what he's doing, and he will not be able to assert the discipline and values of the ANC, which he talks about.
A UNISA professor said the reason the ANC is not charging Pravin Gordhan is because he has this holy cloud of white media, and is the darling of white capital in this country. So that if the ANC actually acted against him, it would lose a lot of support, and there would be a backlash because this man has shares in various organizations. He's beloved by white media. Is there a fear to perhaps discipline this man as an ordinary member because of his perhaps self-righteous image that is perpetuated, particularly by white media in this country?
I think that's a rather cynical view by the professor, because the ANC's perspective on discipline is allow people to vent if they need to vent, but at some point they do get reined in. I think that there are some who might agree with the professor, but well, I don't. I think if one looks at the history of the ANC, 12% of white South Africans throughout our history have ever voted for the ANC, and that's not good enough. We need more white South Africans to become part of the decision-making in this country. The white media has never been with the ANC, and when you say white media, I assume you mean the Caxtons and the Sunday Times and newspapers of that ilk. Of course, he has a following and a voice there, but that following and that voice ultimately will not be able to influence a decision that is made within the ANC when that decision is made, whether it's a positive one or a negative one.
Mr. Blaine Zimande is still the, the GS of the SACP. He's still a member of Parliament and a Minister of Higher Education.
Sure.
Do you think at this point he produces a threat for another split within the ruling party?
No, I don't think so, but I think the conversation within the SACP about running elections on their own is not a new one. It's an old debate. So, we are in a dire situation. We need to get out of it. We're hoping that we can have a series of bilaterals to straighten matters out between ourselves. We're also appealing to the party to talk to us about ourselves before they talk to the media about us. But I think they've taken a view that they'd rather talk to South Africans out there and not talk to the ANC directly. And of course, their platform is based on 3 premises. The president must go, and if he doesn't go, well, then what? Secondly, the premise of, they've put forward the idea of going it alone on elections. And they have a number of other grievances that they point to. A more serious matter with them is that the call that Comrade Blade has made, that the president betrayed him. We're interested then for him to put that very forcefully in a meeting with the ANC where the president is present, directly, to say how that was done. Because that refrain is out there in the open space without a clear and concise and proper explanation that is not related to state capture or any of the other narratives that have been allocated to the current discourse. We want a very clear discussion with the South African Communist Party. We've had a strategic alliance for years. If we are to divert from that alliance, we also need to know what does it mean when they say that they need to expand the alliance. We agree as the ANC that the ANC itself has to expand alliances beyond where we are now, with many different sectors of society.
Do they pose a threat, though, that in December or post-December in 2019,
yes,
they might decide to go at it alone and split the ruling party? We've seen that with COPE.
Of course.
You know, post-Polokwane, although they've really significantly dwindled.
Yes.
Do you think that a COSATU or an SACP split is imminent?
I don't believe that myself. I believe that we have challenges, but I also think that the ANC will never be as arrogant as to say that if there is another split that it won't harm us. We would have to work incredibly hard to convince the voters that we are still the organization and the liberation movement that changes the lives of people. And that's the platform that we will work on. Not individuals, not about individuals, but about the issues that are on the table that affect our people every day.
Were you consulted on Ms. Baleka Mbete's decision for a secret vote on the 8th of August?
The common view was that it should not be a secret ballot. And that unfortunately the Speaker has a prerogative to make decisions together with the people in the Parliament, took the view that instead of having another spate of court actions against her and Parliament, they would go for a secret ballot. And they felt very confident that the ANC would win the vote. And for that reason, they did what they did. But that wasn't the view of the ANC. And I think we're still discussing that matter.
So could it be said that Ms. Baleka Mbete misrepresented also the NWC and deceived the top six into thinking that it was going to be an open vote? And in a press conference the day before the motion, she announces that that vote shall be held in secret. Many of our sources within the ANC are saying that was not the discussion that they had with Ms. Baleka Mbete.
Well, I can confirm that that is correct. That was not the discussion. But I don't think saying that she took a decision deliberately in opposition is equally correct. I think what has happened here is that the parliamentary officials examined the situation and felt that the ANC would not be losing this vote. And therefore, instead of going for a open vote, which would have dragged situations out in court again, get it over and done with, and win the vote and move on. And I think we're on the other side of that vote. We're certainly not going to run after people who had voted against our organization from Parliament. What we are hoping that their conscience will guide them in the future, that perhaps they will understand that even though constitutionally they might have been correct, however, we are a political entity, we are a political party, and they serve there on the ticket of the ANC, and it is the ANC that wins elections, not any particular individual sitting in that parliament.
Do you not believe in the idea that Ms. Baleka Mbete took the decision because if the vote of no confidence did not find favor with President Jacob Zuma, she would then unanimously become the president for 30 days, whilst there would have to be elections for another president in Parliament?
I think that that moves a debate in a fairly simplistic manner. And I don't think we need to go in that direction at all. And I would advise our own comrades not to go that way. I think where we are now is we need to close rank. We need to make sure that the ANC in Parliament functions as a unit. We need to make sure that whatever mistakes have been made are understood as that. And we need to move on and ensure that the rest of this term is not completely blotted out with negativity and mayhem as the opposition would like it to be. And so, yes, if you have difficulties with the ANC, please resign. Don't sit in a seat that you are uncomfortable in. But at the same time, our voice, our call now is for unity and peace in the ANC. We really are calling for that. We cannot drive into the agenda and the narrative that is prescribed for us by other people. We have work to do. Our task is not to be talking about individuals. Our task is simple, is to serve the people of this country, and that is what we must do.
ANN7 did an expose revealing corruption in Treasury. Over 2 billion rand of taxpayers' money chowed up within the Treasury Department. This matter, ANN7 exposed, has subsequently made it to SCOPA.
Yes.
The Minister of Finance, Mr. Melusi Gigaba, has had some stern words against Treasury, and further investigations are being put to Treasury. What should happen in a situation where Treasury has, in maladministration, thrown in the air over 2 billion rand of taxpayers' money?
Any Director General who does not take an Auditor General's report seriously enough to implement the findings of that report where it's pointed out that there are problems is clearly not doing their job correctly. Secondly, the concern would be that, you know, National Treasury is regarded as the citadel. That's how the word I've heard people use of our country. So integrating financial systems has always been a desire of the ANC-led government. Integrating it to avoid corruption, making sure that you have the right people in the right spaces. Any good system where the wrong people are at the helm will go wrong. And unfortunately, sometimes the wrong people are given mantles of being good people when in fact they are not good people. And sometimes diversions are created to take the spotlight away from where there is wrongdoing. Right now, what we are hoping will happen is that there will be a judicial commission that will look at all levels of corruption in the state, all levels of corruption by individuals, all levels of corruption that has given the ANC a bad name, and that those things are put out in the public domain so that there is less speculation around targeting specific individuals who are disliked by one or other person. So National Treasury, like any other department, has to be investigated as well.
The former Minister of Finance and also Mr. Nhlanhla should come back and face the music.
Well, you know, the Parliament can subpoena anybody. So SCOPA has the authority to subpoena any individual to answer questions. One would hope that they do so, so that even SCOPA is not seen as having simply pulled, you know, been very hard with some departments and not hard with others, and lenient with others. I think, you know, what is good, I believe, we've become a very alert country. And I think that the expose by ANN7 was good. So we've become a very alert country. We're not only looking at who does the wrong things, but also who does right things. I am hoping sincerely that we will get to a point where good things are exposed and talked about. And where bad things happen, they are exposed immediately and dealt with. So whatever's happened in the National Treasury, that expose was a good thing. I watched it last night. For the first time, I saw all of it from start to finish. And I thought that the SCOPA people were making very good noises. Hopefully they will act on that. I think the Minister of Finance, the bulk of the responsibility for this investigation is on his shoulders, and for the future of our country and the correctness of our financial integrity, he needs to have an investigation, a proper one. He needs to go back to that draft AG's report. They need to unpack each and every matter that was raised and deal with it. No matter how big or how small it is, it's got to be dealt with.
Your ideal leader for December?
My ideal leader is somebody who...
A name, if you can grant.
Well, you know what, I'm the Deputy Secretary General of the ANC. And my task is to unite this organization. There are 8 candidates. If I choose now anyone amongst them, I'm making a what do you call you're hanging your flag. All I'm saying is that I do believe that the time has come for a pragmatic, straightforward
female
woman who is able to take our country forward, no nonsense person, a person who comes from the ranks of the ANC, has been in the ANC for a long time, has the gravitas, both nationally and internationally, recognition and respect, to carry our country forward into the future. And I'm hoping that our branches will examine every candidate very fairly and not make judgmental decisions, but make objective ones. We need a strong leader. We need a leader who's not going to be afraid to speak out no matter who his or her friends are. That's my view. As a woman, I believe that our country is ready for a woman president, and you know, there's nothing wrong with me saying that. We are ready for a woman president, whether it is now or in the next round, but we are ready. We cannot say that a woman president would be less of a president than a male president. I think that's a ridiculous, misogynistic argument, and it should be dealt with in that manner. It should be dealt with full of disdain. You know, and one of the things that I found quite interesting, the people who were outside the parliament on the 8th of August were calling for Helen Zille to be the president of South Africa. Now, that is a woman I will never support as the president of South Africa.
My time is over, Ms. Duarte.
Thank you.
It has been an absolute pleasure. I hope to speak to you just before the December conference.
I hope so. Yeah. We'll see.
Well, thanks for coming.
Thank you very much.
And that was the DSG of the ruling party, Ms. Jessie Duarte, taking the lead of all political debate in this country. It has been a straight talk interview with me, Sifiso Mahlangu. Channel 405, ANN7. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.